We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Hilchot Shabbat, and we are studying Siman Resh Nun Dalet today. Dinei tafshilin hamuchanin me'erev Shabbat k'dei lehigamer b'Shabbat. The foods that are prepared for Shabbat to be finished, their job of cooking on Shabbat. Afal pi, writes Maran Shulchan Aruch, and this is straight from Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Yud Chet. Afal pi shebasar chai mutar le'ashroto hanimini bekedera. We already discussed in the beginning of Siman Resh Nun Gimel that you could put 5 minutes before Shabbat, you could put a raw piece of meat inside your pot of food, or put an entire raw food in a pot on fire, and you're good to go. Kedera chaya, kitra chayta is mutar. Says the Shulchan Aruch, says the Gemara, that is only when the meat is in the kterah, when it's in the pot. Aval betzali, but when it's being roasted on fire, that's going to be very different. That you cannot do right before it gets dark. And why is that? Says the Shulchan Aruch, because the reason that it is mutar to have a raw food in a pot is because you realize that it's going to take a long time for it to cook, so you give up on it to have it on Friday night, and you're hoping for Shabbat morning Suda. But on fire, having kebab, that is very quick. The heat is much more intense, it is direct, there's no water, there's no pot, there's no barrier between the fire and the meat, so therefore it's going to go very quick. And therefore, you may come to stoke the fire to properly do it quickly, to hope for it for tonight, and therefore it will be asur. Vehanemili, says the Shulchan Aruch, this is only when you have a meat that is solid and it's hard to cook, like basar shor, when you have like a meat of a cow, an ox. That is what we're talking about. Or goats. Also, it needs a lot of bishul. People don't realize that, for instance, deer meat or goat meat, it's very tough. It needs a lot of cooking. It's just like an older cow is like that. But if you have a calf or if you have sheep, that's much easier. It's a softer texture, so it cooks easier and it finishes earlier. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, but by besar gdi ve'of, if you have birds, or if you have sheep, your calf, shehem menutachim le'evarim, that are not whole, they are cut up to small pieces, mutar d'rochayshnan lechitui. That's mutar, because they, without any stoking, they could cook well. And also, if you would stoke the fire, it actually would ruin the quality of that meat. They would burn on the outside and not cook properly in the inside. It will be burnt. And therefore, it just needs a little heat. Right? You don't need the actual fire. So you don't want to, you do chitui only when you want a flame. You want it to be really hot. Over here you have gehalim ba'arot, you have already hot coals, and that is sufficient. You don't want to tamper with the fire at all, because it ruins the quality of your meat. If you are placing it inside the tanur from before Shabbat, and now you're sealing the tanur and smearing it with tar, or with what they used to do with mud, with clay, they'll seal the lid of the tanur. If you're doing that, now we're not choshesh, that you're going to go break the seal, open the door, tamper with the fire. So therefore, if you have that, then any type of basar that you put in there, regardless of the type and the time, so long as you did it before Shabbat, you're good to go, says the Shulchan Aruch. Then, ben gedi ve'of shalemim, even if you have a full bird or a full sheep, or you have tough meat like basar shor ve'ez, mutar telo chashen lechetu, because we're not suspecting that this is going to end up with you breaking the seal. That's too involved. So therefore, we're not concerned about stoking the fire, and you're good to go. שאם בא לפתוח התנור ולהחטות, תיכנס הרוח ויסתנן התנור ויתקשע בשר ויפסיד. Because, first of all, you have to go through the whole motion of doing that. Secondly, it's going to ruin the quality also. You want the tanur to be sealed. You don't want the air from outside to get in. And therefore, you're like, you know what? Let's just wait for this to do its job, because if I break the seal and the air goes in, the whole thing cools down. And if it cools down, then I lost my opportunity to properly make this piece of meat a proper piece of meat. So it says, the Mishna Berura. The only time that you could have like a nice solid piece of meat on kebab, on fire, roasting it, and it still will be mutar, is if it's not right before Shabbat. If you're doing it, let's imagine 10 minutes, 15 minutes before Shabbat, and until candlelight, until you accept Shabbat, there's enough time that it has been cooked enough that further cooking is not good for it anymore. Right? So then we're not concerned that you're going to stoke the fire, because now you're just trying to keep it next to the fire to keep it warm. You don't want it to be cooked further because it dries and becomes, burnt. This is according to Shulchan Aruch in Resh Nun Gimel Seif Aleph, that you all remember. We had two different deot in Shulchan Aruch, and this is the first one which we discuss over there. The second de'ah, which the Ramah takes more seriously, but the Sfaradim do not paskin like, is so long as it's edible, you're good to go. So long as it's edible, you could let it go when it's machal ben derosai. Again, we mentioned this, that even though that the minhag mikaradin has been like the de'ah sheniyah, but we are l'chatchila machmir like de'ah rishona. Right? This has been the discussion that we had before. The minhag of the Sfaradim, old minhag, also has been to be lenient, like the second shita in the Shulchan Aruch over there. But l'maaseh, it is proper to be machmir if possible. So it says the Mishna Berura over here, this is talking about cut off pieces of bird meat, chicken and so on, or gdi, or a young sheep. That, says the Shulchan Aruch, it cooks very quickly. And now the Mishna Berura says, as far as other types of food is concerned, the mineh kitniot v'rakot u'shar dvarim rakim, those types of things, even if you have them in the pot, they cook pretty quickly. Even though that you're putting it raw erev Shabbat, still we will be concerned about stoking the fire. Now, this is a discussion we had in Rosh Gimel, the language of the Rambam, whether you have a girsah in the Gemara that you have chatichat yerek or basar. Is it only meat, or is it yerek also? Because yerek is vegetables. Vegetables cook pretty quick. Last time we checked, right? But the ma'aseh halacha is you need something that it should be tough, that it shouldn't be cooking very quickly and very easily. Now, bebasar shor, shehu basar kashev sarich bishul biyoter uchashinan lechatuyim. That is what we're concerned, because again, it will be ready, but it would be ready better and quicker if you stoke the fire, and it's not going to ruin the meat, so therefore it will be good to go. Aval besar gedi, hainu gedi harach. We're talking about a baby lamb. It's that's what we're talking about. Shehem menutachim, aval imenu menutach sarich bishul kshor ve'ez. Even a gedi, even an oaf, if you don't cut them to pieces, you want to make sure the inner parts cook, right? And also because it is all in one piece, even if a little bit of the outside gets a little burnt, it doesn't damage the whole thing. And the great scheme, the grand scheme of things is not getting damaged. Versus if you have like small 2-inch by 2-inch pieces, and then the whole thing from outside burns for 1 inch, right? So then the whole thing is burnt. If 1 inch from each side burns, so then the whole thing is gone. Whereas if you have a whole animal on a spike, whatever, and you are roasting it, so even if a little bit from outside burns, still the whole inside is juicy and well, and actually that juice and the oil from inside stops the fire from burning it, ruining it from outside. Also, says chokhmah of how these things work, and Chazal are working with that practice and experience of how the sli esh of the fire roasts work. So we have these the way we have it. If it's not cut up, then he needs more bishul, and therefore it will become asur again. Fine. Mutar, which means Shulchan Aruch said, if you have these softer meats and they're cut up to pieces, then it's mutar. It doesn't make a difference if they are fully raw, or even if they have cooked a little bit already. It doesn't make a difference, because you are not going to tamper with that fire, because you know you're going to ruin the meat if you tamper with the fire. The Shulchan Aruch said, we're not concerned for stoking, because if you do it, it's going to burn. So according to this reason, says the Chafetz Chaim, אין חילוק בין אם סולהו בתנור שפיו מכוסה או סולהו מגולב. Doesn't make a difference if your fire is open, closed, is in closed tanur, or is out in the barbecue fire outside. Doesn't make a difference. Everything is אבל יש מחמירין. The shita that the Shulchan Aruch brings afterwards in the Ramah, they hold the eno mutar b'kdi be'of. It's only mutar when the tanur is sealed. It's just not, sealed with clay, but it's closed. It's sealed, but not locked. It's closed. Then, mutar b'kdi ve'of ki im k'shelo b'tanur shepiv mechuse. Ve'rak she'eno tuach petit. There is the scenario that we talk about, a bird, a chicken, or a lamb being mutar de kasher lezika, because they are such sensitive types of meat that a little air getting into the tanur is going to be bad for the quality. Therefore, you're not going to open the. But if you have a tough meat of like a real ox, that is not going to be a problem. If you're doing, and again, this other side of it happens to be also true, that if you are doing it on open fire in a barbecue, even by a lamb or a chicken, you're going to be concerned about the shemai hateh of maybe they're going to come to stoke the fire. Again, this is a hard thing to explain when you haven't done the sugya, because these two are parallel but very different ways of learning the sugya. But nevertheless, says the Mishna Berura, you have to understand that the Ramah will differ from Maran of Shulchan Aruch, and this Maran is much more simple to understand, because you are dealing with maybe it's going to burn because it's sensitive meat, and therefore we're concerned about it. But if you have sealed it, then we're not concerned about it. So it's pretty straightforward. And the Ramah, you have to have a little bit more of a perspective to understand it. So it says the. Actually, we're going to leave it here because I need to go quick. But we're going to, and this is dying out of battery. But we're going to Bezat Hashem tomorrow pick up where we left in the middle of this. Chiluk of Maran and Ramah, Bezrat Hashem, for the next year to come. Chazaku Baruch.